start to list the accomplishments of this foundation since he took over, I would be up here for a long time. So just take my word for it. He's quite a guy. Anyway, Dr. Hess, David.
Thank you, Phyllis. I'm going to see if this will work in this little holder. And if you cannot hear me, just let me know. I am not going to do a standard introduction for Sheila Polk. I'm not going to sit up here and go over her numerous academic, professional, and community accomplishments. But instead, I'm going to tell you a story about going to the movies. Almost 50 years ago to the day, my mother decided to take me and my brother to see a movie that had nothing to do with Walt Disney or cowboys. She took us to see a drama entitled To Kill a Mockingbird. I was 10 years old at the time. For those of you in the audience of the younger generation who are not familiar with this film adaptation of Harper Lee's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, I'm going to give you a brief summary of the storyline. The main character is a 50-year-old widower named Atticus Finch. He's a country lawyer trying to raise 2 young children in a small rural town in Alabama in the 1930s. I liked the movie right away because it was being told through the eyes of his 8-year-old daughter, someone who was close in age to me at the time. In the movie, Atticus, as his children called him, is given the task by a local judge to defend a black man accused of raping a white woman. When the townspeople discover that Atticus is actually going to put on a vigorous defense for his client, it became ugly for Atticus and his children. And I vividly remember 2 scenes from the movie. The first is which Atticus discovers that the townspeople are plotting to lynch his client the night before the trial. Atticus goes down to the jail in his 3-piece suit and his spectacles, puts a chair in front of the jailhouse door and sits and reads his newspaper. The angry mob arrives, and Atticus sits there and refuses to move until the crowd disperses. He did not resort to violence to accomplish his purpose. He never used a weapon or his fist. He used his words and his mannerisms. The second scene that I remember from the movie was the trial itself. It was obvious, even to me as a kid at that time, that Atticus had shown without a shadow of a doubt that his client was wrongfully accused and did not commit this crime. I was certain that the jury was going to acquit his client and there would be a happy ending to the movie. But I was wrong. The jury found his client guilty. And I became disillusioned that the truth had not won out. Later in the movie, I realized that Atticus had known all along that he would lose that case. That town's racism and bias had predetermined the outcome. Yet Atticus stood up, did his job with great dignity, and did the right thing. On that Saturday afternoon, I learned about heroes with moral courage. I already knew about heroes with physical courage. Those who led the cavalry charge and saved the day at the very last moment. Those that charged the machine gun nest to make sure that the platoon was not annihilated. I knew about those types of heroes. But until that day, I never realized that the rarest of heroes are those who do the right thing for the right reason all of the time. That movie actually influenced my brother to become an attorney, and it left me searching real life for real examples of Atticus Finch. 10 years ago, Pam and I moved to Preston, and I found an example of Atticus Finch. I met and got to know Sheila Polk. Over these years, I have seen and observed Sheila in a number of situations. I have seen her interact with high-ranking officials such as the Chief Justice of the United States. I've seen her work with other legal professionals, law enforcement officials. I've watched her at trial. I've even been present when she's received national recognition. And I also most recently witnessed her moral courage when she stood up to the political machinery in Maricopa County when they had abused their power. My observations of Sheila are these. She has the brilliance and intelligence of our founding father, Thomas Jefferson. She has the wisdom of King Solomon, and she has the nobility of Gandhi. And most importantly, she has the trait of moral courage from my childhood hero, Atticus Finch. So please join me in giving a big hand of applause to our county attorney and my dear friend, Sheila Sullivan Polk.
One of really the difficulties about being a prosecutor and working with victims of crime, working with law enforcement, is that the world I work in really is filled with sadness, with loss, with anger, and with some very gruesome cases. With that in mind, what I put together for you this afternoon is something I hope that gives you an overview of crime in Yavapai County, but also does not leave you feeling too depressed and too down. Just a quick overview of the duties of the Yavapai County Attorney, or the county attorney in any jurisdiction. We are, first of all, legal advisors to all the county officials and the county departments. We have the responsibility for prosecuting all the felonies that occur throughout Yavapai County. We prosecute all the juvenile offenders in Yavapai County. We prosecute all the misdemeanors that occur in the unincorporated areas of the county, and we do that in 5 justice courts that are spread out throughout Yavapai County. And probably most important to me, and what I remind my deputy prosecutors of all the time, is that our duty is to seek justice, not merely to convict. This is a rather busy screen that gives you a detailed look at the felonies that my office has been handling going back to 1998. As you can see, or maybe you can't, the felonies in Yavapai County peaked in the year 2000 as methamphetamine had taken a hold of this county and was wreaking its devastation everywhere we looked. In late 2006, out of desperation for what methamphetamine was doing, I and a number of other local concerned officials and citizens formed MATFORCE, which is our Yavapai County Substance Abuse Coalition. And since the formation of MATFORCE, since getting a handle on methamphetamine, Yavapai County has experienced a very dramatic decrease in crime. Of the number of felonies that we do on an annual basis, about 25% are violent offenses, sex offenses, and child abuse cases. The remaining 75% of our cases are drugs, felony driving under the influence cases, and property crimes. As of this month, we have about 21 pending homicide cases. That includes everything from negligent homicide to manslaughter to 2nd degree to 1st degree. And we currently have 3 pending death penalty cases. of my favorite cartoons on the topic of property crimes. This is a husband saying to his wife, "Our credit card was stolen, but I decided not to report it. The thief is spending less than you did." Throughout the nation and throughout Arizona, good things are happening in the world of crime. In fact, on a national schedule, on a national statistic, the crime in the United States between 2002 and 2010 has declined by 19%. The really good news for Arizona is during that same period of time, our state decline in crime is more than 38%. Here in Yavapai County, we actually saw, as I said, a continuing climb in crime until 2007, but the great news is that between 2007 and 2011, our felonies have dropped by more than 39%. Again, getting a handle on methamphetamine played a significant role in bringing our crime rate down. And in Arizona, we have something called truth in sentencing, and I want you to pay attention to this, because every year at the state legislature, under the topic of saving money, efforts are made to change Arizona's sentencing laws. But back in 1994, Arizona passed truth in sentencing. Truth in sentencing is a requirement that a defendant who is given a prison sentence has to serve 85% of that sentence before they are eligible for release. Sentences in Arizona mean something. You get sentenced to prison, you have to go for 85% of that time. That's not the case in other states, and I believe one of the reasons that Arizona has seen a decline in crime at more than twice the national rate is because we have truth in sentencing. Contrary to myths that you might hear out there, our prisons are not filled with low-level drug offenders. A recent study of who is in Arizona's prisons found that more than 95% of the defendants, the inmates in Arizona state prisons, are violent offenders or repeat offenders. And contrary to the myth that we are locking more and more people up in Arizona, since 2009, our inmate population at our state prisons has actually been falling. I'm going to give you a little test. Juvenile crime in Yavapai County. Let's test your knowledge. What offense do you think was the most frequently committed offense by juveniles in fiscal year 2010-2011? A, assault. B, a drug offense. C, vandalism. Or D, liquor violations. What do you think? A, B, C, or D? Drugs. I'm hearing C. That's what I'm hearing from up here. C is vandalism. I'm hearing D, which will be liquor violations. Let's hear it for B. The answer is B. Drug offense constituted the #1 offense during the last fiscal year by juveniles in Yavapai County. During that time, we had 486 total drug offenses. The good news is that that was actually a decline of 18% from the past year. And like the felonies, juvenile crime in Yavapai County has also been on the decline. The drug offenses committed by males, the juvenile males, declined by 25%, which is really good news. The bad news is that drug offenses by females increased by 4%. And for those of you who are thinking that math doesn't add up, it does, because we actually had a much higher rate of male drug offenders than we had of females. Let's test your knowledge a second time. What offense do you think was the second most frequently committed offense by juveniles in Yavapai County for the last fiscal year? A, liquor violations. B, a runaway. C, shoplifting. Or D, criminal damage. A and C. Is it liquor violations or shoplifting? The answer is A, liquor violations. 378 liquor violations. The good news is, like our drug offenses, that was a decline of 4%. And the other good news is our young males. They're on the decline as well. Their number of liquor offenses declined by 16%. And unfortunately, with the females, we saw an increase of 20%. Give you one more chance to test your knowledge about juvenile crime in Yavapai County. For the last fiscal year, what illegal drug did juveniles in Yavapai County most often use? A, marijuana, B, methamphetamine, or C, cocaine? The answer is, the envelope please. The answer is A. 76% of our drug offenses were for marijuana and for drug paraphernalia.
I'll give you my email.
I'm going to talk about MAT Force for a little bit. I already mentioned to you that MAT Force was formed back in 2006. We came together specifically over the issue of methamphetamine. But as we got a handle of meth and we saw good things happening across the county, when agencies and citizens at a very grassroots level came together to address a problem, we decided we wanted our coalition to keep going. And so we expanded the mission of MAT Force to focus on all illegal substances as well as underage drinking. And our mission statement focuses on building healthy communities. MAT Force has been very, very active, and it actually is a national award-winning coalition that other states as well as other counties in Arizona are now looking to for an example of how to get things done, and how to get things done at a very grassroots level, rather than standing back and saying the government or law enforcement is going to solve our substance abuse problem. MAT Force is about everybody being part of a solution. MAT Force has been incredibly busy over the past year, and at each of your places, there are a few of our progress reports from the last year that if anybody is interested, pick it up. It is very detailed, and I'm not going to have the time to talk about everything that MAT Force has done over the past year. I do want to focus on 3 areas that are the focus of MAT Force for the next year, and that's our prescription drug abuse problem, our synthetic or designer drug problem, and medical marijuana. MAT Force held our poster contest. We've been holding a poster contest for the past 4 years. And we just concluded our poster contest. The winner of that poster contest was announced last week at our MAT Force Mixer, and that winning poster will be part of a poster that you'll see across the county, and that poster will go on next year's newsletter that goes out to all 6th graders across Yavapai County. This particular newsletter and every newsletter has information about drugs for the students and also for the parents. And we just distributed 10,000 of these newsletters to the schools. They went out last week to 6th graders across the county, and they'll go out again in the fall to next year's 6th graders. In that poster contest, we had over 550 entries from across the county in the poster contest. And many of the students submitted a letter or an explanation of their poster along with the poster. And this particular letter came from a girl named Taylor, who is 16 years old. And I was really struck with how compelling as well as devastating her words are. And I want to read to you what Taylor had to say. Dear marijuana, you took everything I had, and you still want more. I had a loving, wonderful mom. She turned to you when my dad went to jail for selling you. Yeah, selling you wasn't legit, but it was for a good reason. We needed food to eat, a place to sleep. You were the only one to hire, and my dad was eventually fired. People say you're a gateway drug. Yes, don't listen to what everyone tells you, but I've experienced what they say. First, my mom used you, then crack, then meth, then heroin. She has HIV because of your friend heroin. My mom was 3 months sober until she became your friend again. I began to use you too until I was almost blue. I thought I didn't need school. Little did I know. Thank you for showing me what I don't want to continue to do. Say no to all drugs. She was not the winning poster, by the way, but I thought her words have a big impact, and I wanted to share them with you. On a lighter note, the girl who won the kindergarten first grade age category, her winning poster bore the slogan, "Say no to drugs, yes to pizza." I want to talk just briefly about medical marijuana. Medical marijuana came to Arizona last fall through the initiative process when voters across Arizona voted in favor of this initiative by a mere 4,000 votes. Here in Yavapai County, we soundly defeated this initiative, but that was not enough to combat what was happening in other parts of the state. So we now are the 16th medical marijuana state. Under this scheme, patients put in an application to the Department of Health Services to get their medical marijuana card. And all they need to get that card is a certification from a medical doctor, a DO, a naturopath, or a homeopath. Over the past 12 months, as of the end of April, in Arizona, we now have more than 25 medical marijuana patient cards. Of those 25,000, about 74% are males. You can't tell me that men suffer that much more than women, but 74%. Maybe, I don't know. And more than 47% of the card holders are between the ages of 18 and 40. The medical conditions needed to get this card, there's a whole list of them. Of those who are now card holders, only 4.2% suffer from cancer. 1.3% have HIV/AIDS. 1.8% have glaucoma. And 88% got the card under the category of chronic pain. Those of you who looked at the newspaper just this morning probably saw the announcement out of the Department of Health Services where they are now looking at listing 4 more conditions to get a medical marijuana card. Those conditions are depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and migraines. If you want to have an opinion, go to the Department of Health Services website. They are taking a survey, and you can express your concerns online. And then on May 25th, the department is taking public comment on whether or not these 4 additional conditions should be added. The Director of Health Services opined in this morning's paper that if post-traumatic stress disorder is added, Arizona will see at least 15,000 to 20,000 more patients for that cause alone. That force was very active in trying to defeat this initiative. Once it passed, we became very active in trying to keep the use of marijuana medical. And to that end, we introduced a bill down at the legislature that was ultimately passed and signed into law by Governor Brewer. And this law makes it clear that there will be no medical marijuana on any school campus throughout Arizona, whether you are a daycare center or you are a university. Some of you may have heard of something called bath salts. Bath salts is not something, it's not bubble bath. Bath salts, I don't know how this synthetic drug got its name, but these are lab-created synthetic drugs. They're sold under pleasant-sounding names like Vanilla Sky, Ivory Wave, and White Girl for $25 to $50. These are dangerous synthetic stimulants that have caused serious complications for kids and adults here in Yavapai County, including a couple of reported deaths. This synthetic drug is very similar to methamphetamine, and because it has been legal Our narcotics agents are starting to see this everywhere across the county. It is sold in convenience stores and in places called head shops. In February of 2012, the legislature passed a bill outlining certain compounds that go into these synthetic drugs. The governor signed it into law, and within 1 week, the street chemist had changed the compounds so that in Yavapai County, we already see bath salts back in the convenience stores and the head shops, just with a changed formula. What we are doing in terms of law enforcement is going back to the drawing board to look at other ways to get a handle on bath salts and see if we can stay ahead of these street chemists. And then the third area that Matt Force is focusing on is prescription drug abuse. The Arizona Youth Survey of 2010 found that 16% of our 8th graders self-reported abusing prescription drugs. 28% of our 10th graders self-reported abusing prescription drugs, and 29% of our 12th graders. That's more than 1 in 4 of our 12th graders have admitted to abusing prescription drugs. There is the sentiment out there that if it is legal, it must be safe. We find that our kids are having what are called farming parties, where alcohol is served, kids grab whatever they can out of parents' medicine cabinets, take it to a party, throw all of these pills into a bowl like you see on your screen, drink alcohol and help themselves with pills. And we have had some dire consequences, some very tragic results among our kids, including death, because of that lethal combination. Drug overdoses now rival auto accidents as the leading cause of accidental deaths throughout the United States. And prescription drug abuse, prescription drug overdose is responsible for more deaths than those of heroin and cocaine combined. Matt Force is focusing on this prescription drug abuse problem before we lose any more of our kids. And just last week, we received notice from the governor's office that they are looking to Matt Force as a pilot site for what we can do about prescription drug abuse. Matt Force launched a campaign called Sign Up to Save Lives, and again at your table, you should find a handout that asks you, what do you think of these numbers? Because in Yavapai County, this is according to the State Board of Pharmacy, in Yavapai County, in the last year, 12-month period, more than 20 million narcotic painkillers and sedatives were dispensed by our pharmacies. Our population is just a little bit more than 200,000. That's 92 pills per woman, man, child, and infant. And unlike methamphetamine, marijuana, cocaine, heroin, where the dealers are criminals, the gatekeepers of prescription drugs are our professionals, our pharmacists and our doctors. The state developed a website a couple of years ago. It's called the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program. And that website captures all prescriptions that are filled throughout the state. All doctors and pharmacists, dentists, and our veterinarians have access to that database. It's called the PMP. And all they need to do is go check the PMP to see what else has been prescribed to an individual, and thus cut down on doctor shopping and forgeries and overdosing. So what I'm asking you is to join Matt Force in our effort to get our doctors and our pharmacists in Yavapai County enrolled to use the PMP. Only about 15% of the professionals across the state of Arizona are enrolled in the PMP, let alone using it. And so you can take that handout that's at your table. Next time you visit your doctor or you pick up a prescription at the pharmacy, ask them, are you enrolled in the PMP? And if they say no, then ask them, as a resident of Yavapai County, we are asking you to enroll and use the PMP to help us save young lives here in Yavapai County. This Saturday, Matt Force is doing a Dump the Drugs event, and at your table there should be a handout about the Dump the Drugs. All of our police departments and our sheriff's office throughout Yavapai County on Saturday will be accepting your unwanted medications. Just drive them by your police department. They will safely dispose of those medications and help us get those medications away from the kids and away from these farming parties. Since we are in our centennial year, I just wanted to give you some fun facts about Arizona's history before I sit down. The first territorial legislature was convened in Prescott in September of 1863. On February 14th of 1863, the territory of Arizona was recognized by the U.S. government. The first territorial legislature convened here in Prescott in September of 1863. At that time, 4 counties were approved. A board of regents was appointed for a proposed university, and funds were appropriated for public education. Yavapai County was among the first 4 counties. That's how we earned the nickname, the mother of all counties. Subsequently, the county was divided into 6 more counties and parts of additional counties, and of course today we now have 15 counties in Arizona. Yavapai County still remains 8,000 square miles larger than the state of New Jersey. Because I'm a prosecutor, I have to tell you about the last stagecoach robbery that occurred in 1899 in Arizona. Back then, shootings were commonplace and robberies of trains and stagecoaches occurred on a regular basis. But I love this story about Joe Boot and his accomplice Pearl Hart. She had the nickname the Girl Bandit. They did the last stagecoach robbery, and they were brought to trial in the year 1900 in Yuma. The all-male jury found Joe guilty and found Pearl innocent. But the decision so angered the judge that he ordered Pearl to stand trial a second time. This time, Pearl was found guilty, and she was sentenced to prison at the Yuma Territorial Prison. However, Pearl, not to be outdone, faked a pregnancy and was released early. In 1910, Congress passed the enabling legislation for a constitutional convention for Arizona. At that convention, 41 Democrats and 11 Republicans were elected as delegates. The voters overwhelmingly approved the new Constitution for Arizona on February 9th of 1911, and then on February 14th of 1912, President Taft signed the proclamation into law, making Arizona the 48th state. I love this particular piece of correspondence that I actually found a copy of in my office when we were doing some cleaning several years ago. And this is a letter from the governor of Arizona, Governor Thomas Campbell, on November 24th, 1919, a letter that he wrote to Neil Clark, who was the county attorney for Yavapai County at the time. He was convening a group of delegates down at the governor's office, and I love this. The object of the gathering is to secure effective and efficient cooperation between the state and federal forces in a campaign to reduce the high cost of living within the state of Arizona. Some things never change. I got kind of curious about who Governor Campbell was, and it was interesting because the first governor of Arizona was George Hunt, a Democrat. He served from 1912 to 1917, 3 terms. Then Thomas Campbell, a Republican, was elected. However, Governor Hunt, Thomas Campbell Campbell won that election by 30 votes. Governor Hunt challenged the election and refused to vacate the governor's office. So Thomas Campbell opened up the governor's office out of his home. Meanwhile, Governor Hunt took his case to the Superior Court, and at the end of January in 1917, the Superior Court upheld the election, finding that Campbell was the governor. So Campbell served for 11 months while that case worked its way through the system. Some things never change. It took 11 months. Finally, in December of 1917, the Arizona Supreme Court found that Governor Hunt was the winner of that election. And so Campbell vacated office. George Hunt, the Democrat, took office then from 1917 to 1919. Thomas Campbell, the next election, ran. And he beat the governor. And he became governor. During that period of time, George Hunt received a commission as the minister to Siam. So he picked up and went to Siam for a few years. After Siam, came back to Arizona, ran again, and beat Thomas Campbell. Then a fellow named John Phillips ran the next election and beat George Hunt, and he became governor. At this point, we're up to the Depression, and as you know, Republicans across the country lost in the election when the Depression hit. And look who was back in One of the other things I did was gather photographs of the district attorneys and the county attorneys for Yavapai County. And those photographs are on display in the lobby of the Yavapai County Attorney's Office. But in that project, I ran across this photograph of Mr. Hayward, who was the Yavapai County Attorney from 1917 to 1918. And I was a bit dismayed, actually, at how young and good-looking Mr. Hayward was. And then I realized that back in 2001, when I took office, I was pretty young and good-looking too. This job has just been tough on me. It truly has been an honor and a privilege to serve as Yavapai County for the last 11 years. And I do look forward to serving as Yavapai County Attorney for another term, if all things go well. So thank you very much. It's been a privilege to speak to you here this afternoon.
Time for a couple of questions. They may have a couple of questions for Sheila. Anybody?
Judy.
Thank you so much for giving us this presentation today. Question regarding medical marijuana. Is there anything that can be done to institute reviews of the 88% for the chronic pain, which is obviously a blatant abuse of the law that was passed? What can be put in place to stop the abuse, which all of us who voted against this measure knew would happen?
The medical marijuana law became law through the initiative process, and so it is a very well-protected law. It cannot be changed or modified in any way that contradicts the provisions of the initiative itself. That initiative was 32 pages long, filled with details, and every loophole, as far as I can tell, has been closed. Because I've looked at it upside down and backwards, and I'm unable to find any loopholes. I think that you can express your concern to the Department of Health Services It's a scheme that does not require a prescription from a doctor, and doctors are therefore protected because the DEA had said that if doctors wrote prescriptions for medical marijuana, they would lose their prescription privileges. And so all this initiative requires is a certification from one of those 4 categories of doctors. And we already know that a naturopath out of Phoenix has written just thousands of these certifications. You can complain to the boards if you know of a particular doctor. You can make your concerns known to the Department of Health Services, to the director, Will Humble. Go online and take that survey and express your concerns about these 4 new conditions that they want to add. But after looking at this every which way I can, I've reached the conclusion that Arizona will probably have to go back to the initiative process, run another initiative to get rid of medical marijuana.
Any other questions?
If you can hear me, can you tell me where the dispensaries are located in Prescott, or are there any at this time?
There are no dispensaries yet. There will be 125 dispensaries. Again, the Department of Health Services will be the department that will issue licenses for the dispensaries. That application period is going on right now. They're going to accept applications for the next 4 months. They put in the requirement, which if we have to have medical marijuana, I actually agree with this, and that is that the dispensaries will be geographically located around the state so that there is a dispensary within 25 miles of any particular person who is a card holder. Because if you live more than 25 miles away from a dispensary, the initiative gives you the right to grow your own marijuana in your backyard, your next door neighbor. So I was an advocate that if we have to have medical marijuana, then locate the dispensaries geographically across the state. At least we can eliminate the traffic and all of the blight that we have seen accompanies these neighborhood grows.
Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. I have a question. I know we have a lot of drug rehab places here in, even in Prescott we do, but in Yavapai County, how many? Do you know how many drug rehab places we do have in Yavapai County?
We have a lot. I don't know the number, but Prescott actually is one of the, has probably more drug rehab facilities than most cities across the nation. It is a place that has attracted a lot of the both private, nonprofit facilities for drug rehabilitation. Yes.
I'm familiar what happened in another state that legalized marijuana before Arizona did. And as I understand it, there is outside groups that come into the state to work on this and get this initiative passed. And their ultimate aim is to legalize drugs.
You are exactly right. You're exactly right. It's a group that is based in Washington, D.C. Their goal is to legalize marijuana throughout the United States. Their strategy is to get their foot in the door through medical marijuana, and then once a population has accepted medical marijuana, they believe it will be easier then to convince us to pass the legalization of marijuana. In that last election, that out-of-state group spent more than $750,000 in Arizona getting our voters to pass this medical marijuana. Those of us on the other side, I'm sure many of you heard me speak. I did what I could. I pounded the streets trying to get information out, but we were not funded at all.
I have a question. Ms. Polk, over here. Oh, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is an employer cannot send somebody home who's got the card and under the influence. Is that true?
Yes, that is true. This initiative, again, voters voted for it. The fine details in the 32 pages gave a protected status to medical marijuana patients. and they cannot be discriminated against, and the fact that an employee has a card cannot be grounds for termination from employment.
Let's give Sheila her a big, big, big hand and thank her for coming today. We have a gift for Sheila. It's one of our limited edition pendants. Don't ask me to put it on, please.
Thank you. It's been my privilege. Thank you all very much.
We have a few drawings. We always have a few